Hi there, I'm Alec Sydlow. I'm here today to talk about 2010 in music on Invite from Mr. Rory Sullivan. It's been an interesting year, so I have a lot to say, so let's get right to it. Start with honorable mentions and work from the top down. Just a few to mention in passing here. Black Keys Brothers, which I reviewed on Track by Track earlier. Take a look at that video. A few other albums that are worth mentioning: Ted Leo and the Pharmacist Brutalist Bricks, Matt and Kim's Sidewalks. These are all just fun albums to listen to. I don't have any much to say about the actual music quality, but they're just fun to listen to straight through. And also, no, I hit all my, Best Coast. Best Coast is worth mentioning. I know this will end up on a lot of people's, pretty high up on their top 10s. I enjoyed it. I don't think it was anything too special, but it's definitely worth mentioning as a fun album to go through. Actually, into my real top 10, starting off with Lonely Avenue by Ben Folds and Nick Hornby. This to me was just a match made in indie music heaven. Ben Folds' writing, I think, really comes out on the music here, and the stories that Nick Hornby tells are really just, you get caught up in it. Overall, just a really great album. Definitely worth checking out. Next is Dr. Dog's Shame Shame. Dr. Dog is one of those bands that keeps putting out the same type of album, just kind of a bluesy rock pop album. It all runs together for me, but you know what? If you keep producing the same type of album, it's always good. There's nothing wrong with that. This is just a album where I just half the time I don't know what Dr. Dog's talking about, but I still really enjoy it. There's something, just a really sentimental quality about their music that I always get caught up in. Next is an album I was kind of surprised that I liked. Despite my love for Zooey Deschanel, I hadn't really checked out She and Him, but She and Him Volume 2 is really great. It took me a while to convince myself that I wasn't just liking this album because I want to marry Zooey Deschanel. But beyond that, this is a great country crossover album. The melodies are really catchy. There's some really awesome guitar riffs that pop up here and there. Volume 2 was just really outstanding. Both Volume 1 and 2 were great, but I thought Volume 2 overall was a more solid work. So definitely check that one out. Great country crossover work. Next is The Wild Hunt, which I know is popping up on several other people's lists. Tallest Man on Earth has like one of the coolest voices I have ever heard out of a musician. It's just a guy and his guitar singing about like flowers, but I love it. There's nothing not to love about this album. If you can get past the voice, I've heard people go, "What the fuck is this?" It's just because he has this, "I left my heart to the wild hunt," but it's awesome. It's so pure, it's so raw, and this probably one of the most engaging albums of the year without a doubt. Next is an album I'm kind of surprised I'm not seeing on more lists just because of how much hype I think it got right off the bat. Macy Gray's The Sellout. Yes, this is the same Macy Gray who had that Try to Say Goodbye song like 5 or 6 years ago that was so popular. But this is such a great R&B album. Her voice, once again, is kind of laughable at times. I don't know what makes it so good, but just the music of this album, the presentation, the delivery, makes for one of the best R&B albums I've heard in a really long time. So kudos to Macy Gray for putting together something that's so diverse, but still kind of sticks to the roots that she's always had. Next, early, I believe this was Mr. Sullivan's first review,
Yes,
Fantagram's Eyelid Movies. I also did a review of this one early on. This is just such an incredible album. This is beautifully tragic if you listen to the lyrics, and the way it's delivered makes it so much more powerful. It's the guy-girl hip-hop duo talking about just the pains of love. You are the ocean and I'm good at drowning. Just lyrics like that are going to stick with me for a really long time. I love the way this album is put together. It's a new twist on hip-hop that it was just really blew me away right off the bat. I knew immediately this was going to be in my top 10 albums, as I was thinking, even though it came out so early on this year. And next, of course, we have to talk about Kanye. It's always a touchy subject. Parts of this album, when I first listened to it, I was thinking, this is just Kanye being Kanye. Everyone's saying, you know, Runaway is his, like, you feel sorry for Kanye. I don't, but that doesn't change the fact that he is still probably hip-hop's best producer. And I use the word producer very intentionally. I can't speak for how great of a rapper Kanye really is. I don't think he's anything special in that regard. But when you listen to the way he develops albums, the different sounds he uses, the people he brings in, the guy is a genius. He really just knows how to put something really solid together, and that speaks a lot for the type of hip-hop that's been coming out for the last few years. We could really all take some notes from Kanye. And definitely, as much as I kind of disagree with people's interpretations of Runaway, let's face it, it's a 9-minute song that I can listen to straight through and not realize. This might be one of the best, if not the best track of the year. Okay, one that I am not seeing on people's lists, and I'm really surprised, is Trent Reznor's Social Network soundtrack. For those of you who saw The Social Network, and I highly recommend you do, a little plug for that movie, this is just brilliant. Everyone's talking about the Inception soundtrack, and I don't know why, because here it is. Boom! Social Network is 2 straight hours of just brilliant composition by Reznor. Great keyboard parts. No one does it better than Reznor in putting together sounds, be it, the grungy metal of Year Zero or just abstract whatever of Ghosts. This has all of that. It's so well put together. It totally reflected the way of the movie. If this does not win an award for Best Soundtrack, there is something wrong with our... Which one's movies?
The Academy? Oscars?
Oscars, okay. Emmys, whatever. I don't give a shit. But okay, so it should win an Oscar for Best Soundtrack. This is so well supported. It's absolutely brilliant start to finish. One that came out earlier, and it just seems like it's now starting to get a lot of hype, is Mumford & Sons' Sigh No More. This is another just example of a great crossover album. There's little banjo parts, guitar parts that are really used in a kind of a unique way. They almost explode in a way that country music doesn't. That's where the rock element really comes in. Sigh No More I've actually started to hear on the radio quite a bit, which is interesting because I think this album was actually released in 2009 in the UK and really early in the 2010 in the United States. So for now it being December and just now starting to get attention, kudos to them for kind of sticking with it. This is, once again, just the way a lot of these songs are delivered is kind of in a country-esque style, but still driven with that kind of rock feel. I love this album. I can't help really bouncing along to it. I'm tapping my foot, drumming my fingers or something. This is just a really easy album to get caught up in. And number one, I pretty much knew this was going to be my number one album the moment I heard it, is Gorillaz' Plastic Beach. I don't even know where to begin. I could talk about individual songs on this album for 10 minutes. This is so well produced. For the guy who originally worked with Blur, it never ceases to amaze me what this guy is capable of putting together. I mean, for one thing, the artists who back this album up, it's going to help. I mean, Mos Def, Bobby Womack, Snoop Dogg, yeah, of course. One of the greatest lead-off tracks is Plastic Beach.
It's pretty fucking awesome.
It's so awesome. This album is, let's talk about it. For one thing, it's clean. It actually addresses some pretty interesting topics, and then it'll go into talking about jellyfish. If you cannot find an album that you can, or a song you can really get into on this album, I don't know what's wrong with you. This is so well produced. It uses all different types of instruments, different styles. He essentially invents a new genre with this album. It's like hip-hop rock at its purest. Disappointments for the year, and this is, I'm sure Rory and I know Sam echoed this earlier, Surfer Blood's Astro Coast. I don't hate this album, despite how parts of the review Rory and I did on this earlier will come off. There are parts of it that I kind of like. It's surf rock. It's not going to be musically brilliant. The thing I have to echo about this that we talked about in the review, why did we arbitrarily select this one album immediately, right off the bat of the year, to be incredible? I've heard dozens of albums that are never going to get talked about that are better than this album. It's not bad. it's just not that good either. Next is Yeasayer's Odd Blood. This was an interesting review that Rory and Sam did earlier. I was a huge fan of Yeasayer's last album, All Our Symbols. I thought it was really well put together. But Odd Blood, it's like they tried to go in a different direction but didn't take it far enough so that it really did anything. The fact is this album just kind of falls off, and I will never make it through the entire thing. It falls so short of where I think they wanted to go. I do look forward to see what they come out with in the future, just because I know, after All Our Symbols, how much this band really is capable of, but Odd Blood just didn't do it for me in the long run. Next is Teen Dream by Beach House. We saw Beach House live a couple years ago after Devotion came out, and they just blew me away, and so I had tremendous expectations for Teen Dream. My big issue with this album, though, is it was forgettable. That's really the best word I can come up with. It's good musically. It's what they do best. You know, it's dream pop, I guess is the best way to say it. You know, you're kind of floating around. It's just nothing that I'm gonna write home about. Last one I'll talk about disappointment-wise. Vampire Weekend's Contra. When their first album came out, I could not get enough. Like, I was just in my room just, yeah, this is the best thing ever. I remember talking to Roy, and he's like, oh yeah, it's okay. Like,
yeah, I couldn't be disappointed with Contra because I didn't really like the version that much. So.
But Contra for me, it was a little too synthy. It was just felt like they were trying to add a little more than what was really there. You know, it was fun. I didn't hate it, but the expectations I had, for another upbeat Vampire Weekend album, it wasn't the same. That's not to say that, you know, bands evolving is bad, but it's not always for the best. So, okay. So let's just get on to my overall opinions about the year of music. To quote Wilco, every generation thinks it's the worst. I hear a lot of people saying, oh, just music keeps getting worse. Not true. I think 2010 was actually an outstanding year for music. We just have to keep in mind the best is always going to get better, the worst is always going to get worse. I think if this list that I gave today says you nothing, this was an incredible year for music crossovers, whether it was country rock, rap, rock, pop. There was really a great blend this year that I thought I hadn't seen in past years. I really enjoyed some of the stuff that came out, and especially country crossovers for me. I'm not a big country fan, but there's some elements that I think really belong in rock music that we've kind of stepped away from, with bullshit like Toby Keith and the crap that keeps coming out from the really country music side. There's certainly something to be said for bringing those elements back into rock, and with hip-hop the two. You know, I think Kanye proved that rock can be hip-hop. As much as I don't like the guy, you know, we have to keep in mind that there is some genius in bringing the two back together. And let's go on to my fuck yous of the year. First, let's start with Pitchfork. Fuck you. Every year, you hit a new low in music journalism. I just can't believe. I understand that there comes a point when you being counterculture music reviews makes you the hip point of culture, but that doesn't mean that all of your writing has to be the most elitist crap I have ever read. There's so many better options in terms of music journalism right now. Check out Spin. I mean, people like Rory doing track by track. Much better options. Pitchfork has become everything that it started to rebel against.
It's the Walmart of music reviews.
Yeah, exactly. That could not be more true. I have a hope for Pitchfork's future. Don't get me wrong, I used to use Pitchfork all the time. But now the ratings are flawed, the reviews are just not very good. What's reviewed is predictable. Please, Pitchfork, tone it back and go back to what you used to be special for. You know, just look for things that are different, be open about it, but don't get caught up in how awesome you are. And to end the year, my absolute biggest fuck you of the year has to go to Kesha and everyone who has ever played Kesha on the radio. That TikTok shit came out in 2009. Several more singles. The actual album came out in 2010. I don't want to hear this album, but I have to because I go to college. And because this album is playing every fucking place I go, I have to listen to it. And this might just be the worst, most boring ass crap I have ever heard in my 20 years of listening to music. I'm not saying that I hate Kesha. I'm saying that I hate the fact that Kesha didn't fade away. Why did we not let that work? The system is designed to let bullshit just disappear into nothingness. This is coming from the guy whose #1 play in his iPod is a-ha's Take On Me. This is just wrong. So, like I said, obviously the worst is going to get worse. The best is going to get better. But that's no reason that we have to let even things that other people who listen to shitty music think is bad stay there. It's time to move on. Focus on the good, leave the bad behind. I'm going to go ahead and cut it off there. Thank you guys for watching. Keep following Rory on Track by Track. He's been doing a great job. And I hope everybody has very happy holidays. I'm Alec Sydlow. Peace.